Welcome to the October monthly podcast for VinaCapital Vietnam Opportunity Fund. I'm delighted to be joined today by a long-time colleague and a dear friend, Zui Le. Zui, you and I have been working together for about 12, 13 years.
Yes, correct.
On VOF. And so it's great to have you here on the podcast and in front of the cameras. October has been a volatile month, and what we all say is investors don't like uncertainty. Investors, in fact, hate uncertainty.
Yeah.
But we also know that investors have a way of climbing over walls of worry. The stock market in October corrected. It was down almost 1% in dollar terms. VOF for the month effectively was flat for the month, so it did slightly better than the index. And we've seen that there's been a risk-off sentiment towards the market. It's sort of been explained by perhaps three factors. The political uncertainty, as we have seen before, this sort of tends to present itself, especially as we enter into next year's National Assembly. But importantly, that is just noise. What we see more important, though, is other concerns. One's around the valuation,
yes.
the dong devaluation.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what we've seen so far year to date there?
For the year to date, that Vietnam dong depreciated over like 4 to 5%. That makes the investor they more worried about the further devaluation, so they're selling in October. But to the end of the year, we expect that the Vietnam dong will keep the depreciation at 5%, and in 2026 we expect that Vietnam dong will depreciate about 4 or 5%.
Yeah. And then the other thing has been the valuation concerns, because I think traditionally there's been a expectation that Vietnam has traded at a discount relative to peers. However, we've seen a surge in the market until recent months, and we've seen a surge also to valuation levels. We're back now toward mean reversion. That being said, though, as we discussed in this month's monthly newsletter, earnings growth remains very robust. Right. So perhaps what are our research team thinking about 2025 and importantly 2024 earnings growth? And then can you reflect on how you see our portfolio, the VOF portfolio earnings growth?
Our research, in-house research, that they forecast that earning growth of the market 2025 at 23% and 26 at the 15%. And for VOF portfolio, that we have a stronger growth. For VOF listed portfolio, that in 2025 the earning growth about like 25 to 30%, and for next year 26 we have a growth over like 20 to 25%.
And I think, Zui, that earnings growth for the VOF portfolio has come about from a real concerted effort to restructure and rotate some of the portfolio, right? And so we've taken top sliced and trimmed some existing holdings we've had in the portfolio. I mean, if you think about the portfolio today, we've seen some new names creep into the top 10. One of the things that we've recently participated in is the IPO of Techcombank Securities. And that's probably the first IPO we've seen in the market in the past 8 years. Can you talk a little bit about what sort of motivated us to, one, take a look at Techcombank Securities, and two, why we decided to invest into it?
Yes, correct, Khanh. For beginning of the year, we did a very successful investment in the broker company, #1 broker company in Vietnam called SSI, and we took quite very good profit. And then we deployed money into the first IPO in Vietnam since 2018, and we invested in the Techcombank Securities since IPO in October 2025. The reason is that we think that Techcombank Securities is the #1 wealth tech companies in Vietnam, and it have the strategic moat. They can leverage the ecosystem of Techcombank. It's the #1 retail banking in Vietnam. And I think the final reason is that they have a compelling valuation, 2.5 times price to book 2025, and earning growth of Techcombank Securities about like 20-25% in the next 2 or 3 years. I think a very good investment.
And Techcombank, we talk about in our other investments this idea of the ecosystem. And I think as you talked about, to look at Techcombank Securities, that ecosystem around having the banks stand behind them, having a wealth management platform, having a very strong franchise around corporate bond advisory, and then corporate bond issuances has set them apart. If I recall, in terms of corporate bond advisory, they dominate about 50% of the market, and then in terms of the bond trading, it's about 80 to 85% of the market. And if you think about the bond market in Vietnam, it's like in many markets, far larger than the stock market. The bond market is about 10% GDP at the moment, but the government wishes to build that to about 30% of GDP growth over the next 5 years. So certainly this is a brokerage business that's well positioned, well differentiated from other brokerages in the market. Equally though, I think, you know, we talked about the high valuations. We're seeing a lot more IPO activities. I mean, are we participating, looking at several of these?
I think besides the IPO of Techcombank Securities, we still explore some like other IPO opportunities. But I think that for the like fundamental investment, we always look at the very good companies withdraw. I think that's the key investment philosophy of VOF investment.
And sticking to those principles is incredibly important, especially in these volatile markets. You know, at the moment we're holding, you know, we've obviously felt that the market has run a little ahead of itself prior to the October correction. You've been building up quite a bit of cash in the portfolio, and as we've seen these dips, certainly they have presented buying opportunities either into existing names or into new names. And talking about new names, we've also initiated a position in the leading port company in Vietnam, Gemadep. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to get over those concerns around tariffs and why that is now a key holding in the portfolio?
Yes, correct, and because that we well prepared for all of the concerns in the market. Like KV just mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we have so many worries about the Vietnam dong devaluation, political noise. So we build up a lot of cash. Right now we have over like 8% cash in the portfolio, and we have some names, some good companies that we go into deploy monies. One of them, we have a company called Gemadep. Gemadep now is the #1, the deep sea port operator in Vietnam. I think also a very good logistic companies. We like this company because that they have like additional capacities. From next year, they have a phase 2 of Gemadep. It's the largest deep sea port in the south of Vietnam, with the new capacity of Gemalink in the south of Vietnam from the end of next year. I believe that the earning growth of Gemadep can grow about like over 20-25% in the next 3 years.
And while we're on the subject of port, no pun intended, but they certainly have a moat around them given their #1 position.
Correct.
And the huge sort of capacity that they've been building out for that. So look, thanks for joining this month, Lee, and certainly hope to have you on here far more often. October has been a busy month for us. We've also held our investor conference. Those webinars and presentations are available on our website. And certainly as we head towards the year, VOF's results have just come out. We're holding our AGM in December this year, and we look forward to catching up with our investors in the early part of December in the UK and Europe. And please reach out to us if you wish to have a phone call or otherwise a face-to-face meeting. That wraps up a very interesting month of October, and here's to the remaining of the years, Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, nóng.